Hello and welcome to my review for Journeyman, written and directed by Paddy Considine and also starring Paddy Considine as Matty Burton, a boxer. This is a British drama film, a British boxing film, though I feel like as much as this is a boxing film, it is more of an emotional drama, a real in-depth character study, and the boxing is very much a big part of the story, but it's also more about the person, but also I guess his connection to boxing and how his life changes because of boxing. Interesting to see Paddy Considine star in one of his own films. I was a huge fan of his film from a few years ago, or maybe even 5, 6, 7 years ago, Tyrannosaur. He didn't star in this film, but it's an incredibly dark and gripping drama, and it's just one of those films that really hits you in a raw, visceral way. It's a gut punch of a film, and I was expecting Journeyman to be a similarly kind of, gut-wrenching kind of emotional drama, which it kind of is, though I don't know if I would liken it to Tyrannosaur. They're very different films, though you can kind of link the two as kind of gritty, and the setting, the location, the characters, the actors as very British, but there's a raw style to it where you really hone in on these characters going through some really heavy emotional trauma in both films, actually. So I guess there is actually a lot to link between the two, but the journeys the characters go on are much different in both films. I had to go way out of my way to see this. It was on the other side of town at this art center, I think is what you would call it. They show more kind of independent films, I guess is what you'd say. This wasn't showing in Odeon or View or Cineworld, any of those chains, so had to go out of my way and pay a little bit extra as well, but I was more than happy to do this because I was really looking forward to this film. I was a big fan of Paddy Considine as an actor, but also with Tyrannosaur as a director, and getting kind of excited about the idea of him starring in one of his films that he was going to direct as well. And he wrote the thing, so it's very much a centered project from a writer, director, actor, who I'm really invested in as a guy. I just really like him. I really like the stuff he does and the interviews I've seen with him, so I was really invested in seeing this film, and again, going out my way to go somewhere else to see it, and I felt like it was worth the effort, and it was. It made it feel more special. It wasn't just going in and kind of getting my ticket, and because I have the unlimited card so I can just go in whenever I want to see a movie, but this felt like more of an occasion. Now, the film stars Paddy Considine as Matty Burton, a boxer. He's a prize fighter. He's the champion of the world, actually, when the film opens. But he's not really considered the true champion, at least by his upcoming opponent called The Future, who really mocks Matty and says, this guy isn't the real world champion. When I face him, it's going to be a life changer. He's going to see what a real boxer is and what a true champion is. And that's not verbatim. I'm kind of just giving you a general idea of, this cocky young upstart saying that this guy's past it. He's not the true champion. He won on a technicality. So this fight that we open the movie with, actually, I thought was going to build up, but actually the beginning of the film, the first act, is about this fight. It's really about Matty trying to prove himself. He's the champion, but it's a dichotomy because certain people in the press don't feel like he's the real champion, and certainly his opponent doesn't feel like it, so I guess he needs to prove it. And he's kind of on the out as well. He's in his 40s, so he wants to kind of just prove this one last final point. And his wife, played by Jodie Whittaker, Emma, she, like any wife you'd expect of a boxer, is kind of keen for him to finish, I would imagine, and wants him to come out of it okay at the end. Now, it's no real spoiler. I wanted to kind of keep free of anything when I was, going into this film, but I did see the trailer and it kind of gave away what the film was going to be about. And it's this trauma that Matty goes through, this injury he receives during the match that doesn't really kick in until afterwards. And so I was just waiting for it to happen. And when it does happen, I really liked the reveal of it, and also the massive lack of hand-holding as far as the plot of the film is concerned, in terms of the nitty-gritty details. We never get, like, his wife, speaking to a doctor who says, well, this happened to him, and this is this, and this did this thing with the brain and all that. We don't get all this exposition. We just focus on the through line of the emotions of the characters going through this really traumatic event where Matty, he gets really injured in the head because of this fight, and they have to do something. They have to operate, and when he comes home, it's this horrific reveal when his head turns, and you just see that they've shaved the side of his head, and they've obviously done some sort of surgery on his brain. And he's not the same, and it is... I think one thing that might be a detractor to the film is that it is so emotional. Like, from that point on, in the first 20 minutes of the film, it is just solid, wall-to-wall, just devastating stuff. You see this guy become just completely crippled mentally. You know, he has to relearn everything again. He can barely speak. He's forgotten things in the near, kind of the recent past. Obviously, he remembers his father and things like that, but he's, you know, he's not remembering that he has a young daughter. You know, he has to learn that again, and he can't do things properly. And, you know, he's rehabbing. He's trying to do physiotherapy and stuff, and mental therapy too. And, you know, there are these people, obviously, who've gone through this kind of stuff where just the trauma of the head has just completely changed them as a person. And it is just devastating. And like I said, maybe it's a detractor to the film because it is so one note in that aspect. I mean, that there is kind of building towards some sort of hope at the end, but it is so depressing. You know, it really is a hard watch. But I think that is definitely a choice because that's what it would be like. You know, you wouldn't get a light reprieve in real life in a situation like this, and that's kind of what Paddy Considine has gone for with this film, is really getting down to the realism of the emotions that are involved in something like this. Because another thing I'll say against the film is that, and I hate to say it because I was so impressed with the film and I really was quite taken with it, there's a lot of contrivance, I feel like. We deal with his wife Emma, who's played beautifully by Jodie Whittaker. I mean, she's such a fantastic actress, and you know, everyone's talking about her now because of Doctor Who, and I even heard someone behind me going, "New Doctor Who." You can't avoid it, you know, but she is such a great actress, and she really conveys a strength that I found quite moving as this wife who, you know, could completely break down in a situation like this where her husband is completely different. You know, she's having to show him pictures of when they got married. You know, it's awful, but she really takes it in her stride and tries to be strong. And there's something so admirable about that I feel like I wouldn't be able to have the strength to do myself. So I found that part of the film really great. But then she kind of leaves, you know, and I feel like even though there was a very good reason for her leaving, I feel like what happens after that would surely bring her back into the fold, and it just doesn't until near the end of the film, which to me felt like it was more for the sake of giving us more drama with Matty being alone and having to fend for himself a little bit with this situation. It didn't feel quite true to character to me. And also his friends don't come and see him. You know, they abandon him. His friends, his trainers, nothing. You know, after this incident has happened, they don't come and visit him off the grid. You know, so the film becomes about their redemption as people and as friends to him, to kind of come back and to make amends. And I just feel like those aren't real friends. You know, if they wouldn't come and visit you in the hospital, that just doesn't make too much sense to me. So I feel like it's contrived to make things even more emotional. And that is a shame because I feel like without those contrivances you've got an incredible film. As it is, I still think it's a great film because as I was trying to work in, I was trying to carefully word my thoughts. The emotions are really what carry the film. And there is a scene in this film that it just broke me. You know, it's so powerful and hard to watch, and you know, but it's the kind of hard to watch stuff where you really it's hard to describe really, and I almost feel like retaking this and filming it again, but I'll roll with it. You know, when you watch a film and you get so emotionally involved that it's just, you know, you're so wrapped up in it. You know, everything is the film, everything is the story. You're not thinking about where you sat, what you're going to drink in 2 seconds. You're not thinking about, you know, leaving afterwards, what bus am I going to get home. You're just completely absorbed in this performance. You know, you feel like you're inside the movie. You don't think about anything outside the screen that you're looking. You're just looking at a box on the wall, you know, with you know, this image projected onto it. But those moments where you utterly get lost into it, even if it is hard to watch as far as it's really emotional and it makes you want to cry, those are the moments you just live for as a film fan, me at least anyway. So this film has those moments, and you know, it's not a film I'd watch again and again, but it is a film that I was really, really impressed by. And not really a big boxing fan, you know, to say the least. Actually, I don't really like boxing, but and I'm almost against it in certain aspects when the things we've learned in recent years with concussions and all that kind of stuff and head trauma, and seeing some of the documentaries of you know, about Ali and Frazier and kind of the fallout of that. You know, they're celebrated as heroes, but then afterwards in old age, it was just so sad and tragic. But you know, again, Jodie Whittaker, fantastic. Paddy Considine this is probably one of the best performances I've ever seen. I don't know how accurately it portrays people who have that kind of condition where they've had a head trauma and it's changed them in that way. And I also feel like, again, I hate to say it, but I do feel like the way that he improves feels a little bit too premature to me. Unless it took place over a very long period. There's no kind of, again, hand-holding when it comes to how much time has passed. As far as the film is concerned, he had the issue with his head, he went to the hospital, they operated, he came home the next day. Or he went to the hospital, he was there for months. I don't know, they don't really give you that information, which I like, but by the end of the film, I was really into it, and into what was happening, into the development of everything that was building up to the ending of the film. And then Matty says that, oh yeah, a few weeks ago this happened. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, it took me completely out of the film. I was like, wait, a few weeks ago? Oh, so this has only been a few weeks, because it felt like there'd been so much growth. To me, it felt like at least months, if not 6 months, Which I'm not saying that would be the right thing to do timing-wise, but I felt like his development and kind of improving his faculties and stuff maybe was a little bit accelerated. But again, that's kind of what you have to do with a 90-minute movie. So, that's just looking at the nuts and bolts of it and saying, well, this doesn't feel too true to life or whatever. But really, when you look at the emotions, when you look at the performances, again, just his committed performance, it doesn't feel like it's overplayed or like it's overdone or that he's, or that it's, in bad taste, It's just really, it's stuck with me. It's been a week since I saw the film. It's still scenes of replaying in my head, and I think that is the mark of a great film. I think for me, apart from the incredibly immersive and emotional acting that is surely the highlight of the film and its biggest strength, the most effective moments of Journeyman were these kind of smash cut flashbacks where Matty was going about his day-to-day life and would suddenly get these big flashbacks that last maybe only a few frames, and the sound design and just the blunt trauma of him getting punched in the head and his flashbacks to those moments, and also Paddy Considine's acting of feeling like he's actually been punched again. People in the cinema were flinching and jumping almost, and it was a very small room, but it was so incredibly powerful to see those flashbacks and to really feel the pain and the pain of the memories that he had, and again the trauma. In most boxing movies they tend to glamorize the sport, which is fine up to a point, but I really like that this film takes a different angle and focuses more on the effects of boxing and what the effects can be in boxing with head trauma, and it kind of strips away a lot of that glamorizing of boxing, which is nice, gives it a fresh take and a different kind of angle on the traditional boxing movie, I think. But I do think it could have been an even greater film if those things perhaps had been done a little bit better, because I do feel like the film is full of a little bit of a contrivance throughout the entire film. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Journeyman. If you've seen the film, please let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. If you have seen it, it's obviously a film not a lot of people are going to go and see, which is a shame, but I was happy I went to see it. Again, happy I made the effort to go out and check it out, and I would highly recommend it. It's an emotional watch, but it's one that I think it is really enjoyable to get gripped by and to be captivated and drawn into. It's a really draining but worthwhile emotional cinematic experience for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
He's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause